The stars outside the Vanguard's bridge flickered like distant beacons, a reminder of the vast, cold silence of space. Captain Arden Strayler stood with her arms folded behind her back, gazing at the endless void. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, just another mission to keep the peace in the colonies. But then, the message came. The Zyren had arrived. "Captain," Commander Lyra Hayes' voice broke through the stillness, "we've received confirmation. Zyren fleet on approach, confirmed hostile." Arden turned slowly, the weight of the words sinking in like a cold stone. She had known this day might come, but the reality of it, the immediacy, hit her like a punch to the gut. How long until they reached the first colony? Arden's voice was steady, but her mind raced, processing the ramifications. "Less than 6 hours, ma'am." "They're moving fast," Lyra responded, her face taut with worry. The Zyren coalition had been a shadow on the horizon for years, a growing force, a formidable presence in the galaxy. But Earth, and its expanding colonies, had always been dismissed as an afterthought by the galactic powers. Humanity was considered too young, too untested. The Zyren had never taken Earth seriously. Now, they had chosen war. Arden's thoughts flashed to the last war, decades ago. Her younger brother, Jason, had been among the first to die in that conflict. She had promised him that humanity would never be caught unprepared again. But in the years since, Earth had grown complacent. They had assumed the galaxy's peace was permanent. They were wrong. "Signal the fleet. Prepare for immediate deployment," Arden ordered, her voice sharpening. "Lyra, I want the full force ready. No one underestimates us again." Lyra's eyes flickered with a hint of uncertainty, but she didn't hesitate. She turned to relay the orders. Arden watched her for a moment before turning to the tactical console. On the screen, the red dots representing Zyren ships were already closing in on the outer rim of Earth's colonies. The Zyren had arrived, and they meant business. An hour later, the Vanguard sailed out of Earth's atmosphere, its fleet in tow. Arden stood at the helm, the vastness of space stretching out before her. Every instinct told her to be cautious. The Zyren were technologically superior in ways they couldn't match. But they had underestimated humanity once, and now they were about to find out just how much Earth could endure. "Captain, we've established a comm link with the Zyren flagship," Lyra's voice cut through the tension. "Put it through," Arden replied, her eyes narrowing. She wasn't in the mood for diplomacy, but she would at least hear them out. The screen flickered, and the imposing face of Overlord Kirax Vorn appeared. His pale blue skin glowed under the harsh lighting of his ship's bridge. His eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Arden's. "Captain Strayler," Kirax's voice echoed across the bridge, cold and methodical. "Your species has been warned. Your expansion threatens the Zyren coalition. This is your final chance to submit." "Submit?" Arden scoffed, her lips curling into a thin smile. "You've made a grave mistake, Overlord. You think humanity will bow down? You've gravely underestimated us." The Zyren leader's expression remained unreadable. "Your species is weak. A mere blip in the galaxy. You will fall, Captain. I will ensure your extinction is swift." Arden leaned forward slightly, her eyes never leaving Kirax's. "You don't get it, do you? You've chosen the wrong species to pick a fight with. You chose war, and now, we'll show you how it's won." The transmission cut off, and the silence in the command room was palpable. Lyra stepped up beside her. "You've got him riled up, Captain." Arden let out a breath, steadying herself. "Good. Let him underestimate us. It's exactly what we want." The next few hours were a blur of action. The Vanguard and its fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the first target, the colony on Callista 3. What greeted them was far worse than anyone had imagined. The Zyren fleet was overwhelming, a vast armada stretching across the void, each ship bristling with weapons. Earth's defenses, though formidable, were no match for the sheer numbers and firepower the Zyren brought to bear. "Shields up! All stations, prepare for combat," Arden barked. The bridge hummed with activity as the crew sprang into action, each person in sync with their role. The first salvo from the Zyren ships rocked the Vanguard, sending tremors through the hull. "Direct hit on our port side, Captain," Lieutenant Riley reported, his voice strained. "Hull integrity at 72%. "We're not going down like this," Arden muttered under her breath. "Reroute power to the starboard shields. Get us in close. We can't afford to be a sitting target." The Vanguard plunged forward, dodging fire as best it could. The Zyren ships, far more advanced in terms of weaponry and shields, pounded Earth's defenses, but they had one thing the Zyren couldn't anticipate: human ingenuity. "We've locked onto their main ship's weak point," Chief Engineer Callan shouted from his station. "If we can get a direct hit, it might take them out of the fight." Arden's eyes narrowed as she calculated the risk. "Do it. We'll make it work." The Vanguard fired, the blast streaking across the void like a comet. The shot found its mark, striking the Zyren flagship's underbelly. The explosion lit up the stars, temporarily blinding them all. The Zyren flagship staggered, its shields flickering. "Target the other vessels. Focus fire on their propulsion systems," Arden ordered. For a brief moment, it seemed as though humanity had a chance. The Zyren flagship limped, struggling to regain its position in the fight. But then, another shockwave rocked the fleet. "Captain! More Zyren ships incoming, reinforcements." "This is just the beginning," Lyra called out, urgency in her voice. Arden cursed under her breath. The Zyren were relentless. "Fall back. We'll regroup at the defense perimeter. We need to get the civilians out of here." But even as they fell back, Arden knew the truth. The war had begun. And it would not be quick, nor would it be easy. As the Vanguard retreated to the defensive line, Arden stood at the command center, her gaze locked on the stars. The battle was only beginning. But humanity's message was already clear: they would fight. And they would never surrender. "Get ready, Lyra. This is only the first wave," Arden said quietly. Lyra nodded, her expression hardening. "We've got this, Captain. Earth's not going down without a fight." Arden turned back to the viewport. The stars were endless, but in that moment, they weren't alone. The galaxy would soon learn what it meant to face humanity in war. The Vanguard powered on, heading into the unknown. The fight for survival had begun. The Vanguard sat at the edge of the fleet formation, its hull scarred and patched from the previous battle. The stars outside were cold and silent, as though the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Arden Strayler stood at the command center, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The damage reports flashed across the screens, each one a reminder of just how close they had come to losing everything. "Status report, Lyra," she asked, her voice low but firm. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on her shoulders. Commander Lyra Hayes turned from the tactical console, her face tight with frustration. "We're down 2 cruisers, Captain. And we lost contact with 2 of the outer colonies. The Zyren are pressing hard. They're not letting up." Arden nodded grimly. "I expected nothing less. They'll keep coming. We can't let them push us back further." Lyra hesitated, her eyes flickering with doubt. "Captain, we're barely holding the line. Their numbers are overwhelming. Our fleet is stretched thin, and our defenses are getting hammered. The Zyren have superior firepower. We need to regroup and rethink our strategy." "Regrouping means waiting to die," Arden said, her voice biting. "We'll fight, or we'll burn trying. Prepare for the next wave. We can't afford to sit idle." She turned away, staring at the tactical map of the star system. The Zyren fleet loomed on the outer rim, circling like sharks, biding their time. Lyra stepped closer, her voice softer now. "I know you want to win, Captain. But we can't fight a war of attrition. We need a plan, something unexpected. We're getting pushed back, and we don't have much time." Arden looked at her, her gaze steely. "We have one advantage, Lyra. We know our enemy's patterns. We're unpredictable. That's our edge. The next few hours passed in a blur of tactical briefings and quick adjustments. Arden's mind raced, calculating every possible move, every potential flaw in the Zyren strategy. The odds were long, but she wasn't about to let her crew, her people, go down without a fight. We're going to hit them where they're least expecting it, Arden finally declared as she stood before her officers. We'll use their own arrogance against them. Lyra raised an eyebrow. How do you plan to do that? Arden's lips curled into a determined smile. We're going to make them chase us. The plan was simple, in theory. The Vanguard would create a diversion, drawing the Zyren into a trap. With their attention diverted, the rest of the fleet would move into position and strike at the Zyren's weak points, specifically, their propulsion systems, the lifeblood of their immense warships. If they could disable enough of the Zyren ships, they could force them into a retreat. Start preparing the fleet, Arden ordered. We move at 0600 hours. We'll bait them in, and we won't give them a chance to regroup. Lyra's lips tightened, clearly skeptical, but she didn't voice her doubts. Instead, she nodded and left to carry out the orders. Arden, however, stayed behind for a moment longer, staring out into space. This was their last chance. The Zyren were relentless, but they weren't invincible. She had to believe that. The early hours of the next day were tense. Every ship in the fleet, including the Vanguard, was in position, each awaiting the signal. The plan was risky. The Zyren had superior numbers, and there was no guarantee they would fall for the ruse. But if they didn't try something now, Earth's defenses would crumble. Captain, the Zyren fleet is coming into range, Lyra reported, her voice tight with anticipation. Arden gripped the console. Hold steady. Don't give away our position until the last moment. The vast blackness of space swallowed them whole. Then, like a thunderstorm on the horizon, the Zyren fleet appeared, dozens of massive ships, their dark forms cutting through the void with terrifying precision. Now, Arden barked, her voice cutting through the tense air of the command center. Let's give them a show. The Vanguard shot forward at full speed, bursting from the fleet's formation. It drew the attention of the Zyren, who immediately adjusted their trajectory, locking their weapons on the Vanguard as it darted across the void. Behind it, the rest of the fleet moved into position, silently lining up their targets. The Vanguard danced through the enemy lines, evading shots with sharp turns and evasive maneuvers. The Zyren fired relentlessly, but their shots flew wide. The Vanguard wasn't their true target, though. It was bait that kept the Zyren focused on a single vessel while the rest of humanity's forces prepared their strike. Lyra's voice came over the comms. Fleet is in position. Ready to attack. Engage! Arden shouted. The battle erupted in a hail of gunfire. Earth's ships began striking at the Zyren fleet's weak points, targeting their propulsion systems with precision. Explosions lit up the darkness as the Zyren ships began to falter, their movements becoming erratic. But the Zyren were far from done. As expected, their reinforcements appeared, rushing to engage Earth's fleet. They weren't going to back down easily. Shields at 40%, Captain. Lieutenant Riley shouted. We're taking heavy fire. We can take it, Arden replied, her jaw clenched. Keep hitting their engines. Focus on the large dreadnoughts first. The fight was brutal, the intensity of the battle growing by the minute. Despite their best efforts, Earth's fleet was still outgunned. But they had one thing the Zyren didn't: desperation. They had to win. There was no other option. The Vanguard dodged another salvo, and Arden saw it, an opening. One of the Zyren dreadnoughts had taken a direct hit to its rear thrusters, slowing its movement. It was the perfect chance to finish the job. All units, focus fire on Dreadnought 7, Arden commanded. Take it out now. Earth's ships concentrated their firepower, and with a blinding explosion, the massive Zyren ship was crippled, its shields failing and its propulsion system destroyed. The remaining Zyren ships hesitated, the realization settling in, they weren't as invincible as they had once believed. We've breached their lines, Captain, Lyra said, her voice tinged with triumph. They're retreating. For the first time in what felt like forever, Arden allowed herself a small, hard smile. "We've turned the tide, Lyra. But we're not done yet." The battle wasn't over. It had barely begun. As the last of the Zyren ships retreated into the blackness of space, Arden stood at the command center, surveying the damage. Earth's fleet had taken heavy losses, but they had delivered a blow to the Zyren they hadn't expected. The tables had turned, if only for a moment. "Start repairs," Arden said, her voice firm but weary. "And prepare for the next wave." The war was far from over. But now, for the first time since the invasion began, humanity had a glimmer of hope. And Arden Strayler would be damned if she let it slip away. "Get ready," she muttered under her breath, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "We've just started. This fight is far from finished." The battle had raged for days, and Arden Strayler had begun to feel the weight of command like never before. She stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, the once gleaming walls now scorched and scarred from the relentless barrage of the Zyren fleet. Each battle had bled them dry, each victory hard-won at an impossible cost. Yet, here they were, still standing. Still fighting. "Captain," Lyra's voice crackled over the comms. "We've intercepted a high-priority transmission from the Zyren flagship. They're demanding a surrender or they'll annihilate the remaining colonies." Arden's heart sank, but her resolve only hardened. "They'll destroy more innocent lives if we give in. We can't stop now." Lyra hesitated, knowing the weight of what that meant. "Understood. I'll relay the orders." Arden walked across the bridge to the tactical station. The current war was a brutal dance, one where every move felt like a gamble. The Zyren were relentless, but they were not without weaknesses. The issue now wasn't just strategy, it was survival. "What's our current status?" Arden asked, turning to Lieutenant Riley, who was busy scanning the fleet's position. "Of the original 16 ships, we've lost 4, Riley reported, his voice grim. The remaining fleet is at half strength. We have no more reinforcements. If the Zyren bring in their full force now, we'll be outnumbered," Arden finished, her gaze hardening. She had feared this moment, the point where Earth's military might would be stretched too thin. But she knew one thing, the Zyren were underestimating humanity's spirit. "Send out a message to the fleet," Arden ordered. "All hands, prepare for a final strike. This ends today." Hours later, Earth's remaining fleet assembled at the edge of the system, a makeshift line of ships ready to make their stand. The Vanguard led the charge, its hull patched and reinforced, a symbol of humanity's resilience. Arden stood before her officers, her gaze moving over their tired faces. There was fear, certainly, but there was also something else, determination. "We may be battered," Arden began, her voice steady but carrying the weight of leadership, "but the Zyren haven't seen what we're truly capable of. They think they can break us. They think we'll surrender. We're going to show them just how wrong they are. The fight ends today, one way or another." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes meeting Arden's. "We're with you, Captain." Arden nodded, a fire igniting in her chest. "Then let's make it count." The Zyren fleet was already approaching, their colossal ships casting dark shadows over the void. As the Vanguard and the remaining Earth ships aligned themselves for the final battle, a surge of anticipation and dread filled the air. Arden was acutely aware of the magnitude of what was about to unfold. "Enemy ships in range, Captain," Lieutenant Riley reported, his tone laced with tension. "All stations, prepare for combat," Arden ordered. "We will fight like we've never fought before. This is humanity's last stand." The Vanguard surged forward, its engines roaring to life. Behind it, the rest of the fleet followed suit. The Zyren ships loomed ahead, their cold, alien forms a testament to the overwhelming power they wielded. But there was something in the air, something that made Arden feel certain, they were not ready for this. "Lock onto their dreadnoughts," Arden commanded. "Focus all fire on the largest vessels. We're going to make them bleed." The first volley of fire from the Vanguard struck true, tearing into the Zyren flagship's shields. Explosions rippled across its surface, the first sign of weakness they had seen from the invaders. It was a small victory, but it was enough to send a message: Earth wasn't going down without a fight. Shields holding at 60%, Captain, Riley reported. But the Zyren are returning fire. They're concentrating on the vanguard. Stay with the plan, Arden replied, her voice unyielding. Keep them busy. We'll take out their engines, and we'll break their momentum. As the vanguard weaved through the incoming fire, Arden could feel the tension building. Every moment, every decision, was critical. They had no backup, no second chances. This was it. Captain, Lyra's voice came over the comms, laced with urgency. We're taking too much damage. The port shields are almost gone. We're not backing down. Arden snapped. Get us in closer, keep their attention focused on us. Lyra hesitated but followed orders, guiding the vanguard in a series of sharp, unpredictable maneuvers, all while the ship's hull groaned under the strain. The Zyren fired relentlessly, but Earth's ships were nimble, using their speed to their advantage. All ships, concentrate fire on the Zyren fleet's engines. Arden barked. This is our chance. The remaining Earth ships surged forward, unleashing everything they had. The power of their combined assault tore into the Zyren ships, focusing on their propulsion systems. Dreadnoughts and cruisers began to falter, their movements slow and clumsy as their engines were disabled. For the first time, the tide of the battle began to shift. Enemy ships are retreating. Riley shouted, disbelief lacing his voice. Arden felt a surge of hope, faint, but undeniable. Don't let them get away. Finish them off. But as the Earth fleet pursued, something unexpected happened. A new wave of Zyren reinforcements appeared from the depths of space, their ships larger, more advanced. The Zyren weren't retreating, they were regrouping for one final push. Arden's heart sank as she realized the gravity of the situation. We've been flanked, Lyra said, her voice low with dread. They're bringing in their heavy artillery. This could be it. Arden's jaw clenched, her mind working faster than her hands could move. They didn't have the strength to fight off this new wave. But they couldn't give up, not now, not after everything they had fought for. There was one final move she had to make. Lieutenant, Arden said, her voice suddenly calm and precise. Reroute all power to the forward weapons. We're going to take down their flagship once and for all. But Captain, Riley protested, that'll leave us vulnerable. It's the only chance we have, Arden said firmly. If we don't take their flagship down now, we'll never get another shot. The vanguard surged forward, ignoring the incoming fire from the Zyren ships. Arden's hands gripped the command chair, every nerve in her body focused on the task ahead. The flagship loomed before them, its shields barely holding after the earlier assault. All power to forward cannons, Arden ordered. The ship's weapons flared to life, charging with deadly force. The vanguard locked onto the Zyren flagship's command center, its massive cannon charging for one final, decisive strike. Fire! Arden commanded. The beam shot out, cutting through the void and slamming into the flagship's exposed core. The explosion was deafening, lighting up the stars around them. For a moment, Arden could only stare in disbelief as the massive ship crumpled under the force of their attack. Then, the Zyren fleet began to break apart, their ships no longer coordinated, no longer unified. We've done it, Lyra whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. Arden allowed herself a breath, relief flooding her. They had won. But even as the Zyren forces retreated, Arden knew this wasn't the end. The battle for Earth had been won, but the war? The war would continue. We've won this round, Arden said quietly. But the fight for humanity is far from over.